I'm David Haug, Superintendent of Jefferson R-7 School District, and we're kicking off our fall podcast series again. Really honored to be joined by Catryn Cattoor, class of 2021. Catryn and I spoke this summer about different topics we could look at. So part of this will be talking about her and kind of her journey, but also more specifically, maybe students looking at the ROTC route while they're in college. So we'll get to that first. But first, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
You just got back from Italy and
Yeah, all kinds of places. My first 2 times out of the country, but thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to get this going.
how was the travels?
Oh, it was fantastic. Yeah, Italy is definitely a very good place to start. First time out of the country. Almost everybody speaks English, at least like in the really touristy areas. But it was nice to see some non-touristy areas too.
Good.
We went down to Naples and actually just got to spend a day on the beach. And meet a lot of the locals and some people that had never seen Americans before, so they thought we were awesome. But
No, I'm just kidding.
I know. But yeah, no, it was a really cool experience, and the whole purpose of me being out in Italy was to learn more about NATO, about the North Atlantic Treaty Organization.
Okay.
So we had some really cool opportunities to meet some commanders down there, and then also shadow a few people that are specifically in NATO career fields.
So it wasn't just the vacation that you got to see things, but it was actually over there to kind of help maybe look at furthering your career as well.
Yes, it was an Air Force officer development training opportunity. So I wasn't out there with family. I was out there with 5 other cadets and 2 cadre members.
Awesome. I will say this, and if you've seen the prior podcast with Bradley, just in general out there, and then I had talking to Brennan Reese in the past and some of our other graduates who've gone to it is amazing all the different places you get to kind of travel and see if you're really passionate about it.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a ton of opportunities out there, and it's hard to find them sometimes. They take a little bit of work, and you got to put in your word early if you want something specific. But they're definitely out there, and I really can't speak highly enough of like the people that have helped me get some of the opportunities I've had while on ROTC.
Seemed like it's been a good path for you. We'll get to more of that in just a minute. So when I look back at your high school career, very, very well-rounded student athlete. I know your mom and I have talked, and we had kind of a funny conversation before we started about it. Trying to make sure I'm not going to call you Amy.
Yeah, and I had to make sure I called you Dr. Haug.
I said, don't
Mr.
worry
Haug.
about that. Mr. Haug's fine. Like I told you, to Jefferson, I'll always be Mr. Haug. It's okay. I don't worry about that stuff. But I just remember what a really strong student you were. You really had an outstanding ACT score. Did you do much in the way of ACT prep outside of what we did for you at Jefferson? Did you do anything extra and beyond that?
A little bit, but it was mostly based on the preparation that I had in class here. Ms. Schochner especially guided the way in that regard.
Yeah, we had some really great momentum early to get our whole staff trained. I know it's something we're kind of looking to make sure as our staff's turned over a little bit. That'll be a focus for us next year. But we do embed that here. So do you think academically that, you're at Washington University now in St. Louis, very challenging academic school. Do you think the Jefferson experience helped you? And I'm going to ask you the follow-up question. What could we have done better?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest opportunities that I had at Jefferson was not only academically, but to be able to play sports and play a lot of sports while I was here. I feel like sometimes when I'm at WashU, I'm like, man, like you've never played a team sport, have you? Like when I'm in groups and stuff like that. So I feel like being at a smaller school and having the opportunity to really touch a lot of different areas rather than just being focused on academics, I feel like that's what really prepared me. Time management, like being able to work with teams, communication-wise. I think that's what really prepared me to go into college. Because there's nothing that I feel like can really prepare you academically. Maybe initially it really helped. Shout out to Ms. Schochner again. It really helped that her Calc 1 class actually covered a little bit of Calc 2. But otherwise, like there's not much that you can do academically, I feel like, to prepare because it's completely different. But there's a lot that you can do as far as like the skill building before you get out in the real world.
That's a great answer. Anything we could have done better? And maybe another way to phrase that is that is there anything you look back, if you could go back and tell your 8th grade self, hey, make sure you take advantage of this in high school? We talked a
I
little
would,
about the language stuff.
yeah, I would say the language stuff, and this is something I only realized in maybe like the past month or two. Now that I've been to Italy and I've been to Costa Rica too, like I really wish that I spoke a second language, and had taken that more seriously when I was in high school. I think a lot of people would say that. At least a lot of people that I know in college would
Hmm.
say that. But yeah, that's a big one. And then if I had to go back and tell my eighth grade self anything, I would definitely say, as far as like careers go, like you don't have to know what you want to be from the time that you're 5. I wanted to be a veterinarian when I
Yeah,
was in
I do
eighth grade.
remember that.
Yes, I was like dead set on it, and I had kind of like a mid high school crisis, and I thought it was the end of the world. I distinctly remember it being the end of the world. Um, and I was found myself sitting in like a military recruiting office, and I was like, what am I doing here? Like, I felt unprepared because I hadn't wanted to do it for my entire life.
Yeah.
So I feel like if I could go back to my eighth grade self, I would definitely say like, hey, like there's so many career fields out there. Like don't limit yourself like to your childhood aspirations necessarily. Like it's great to have those,
Hmm.
but they aren't necessarily the guidepost by which you need to live the rest of your life. So
So
that's 100% what I would tell myself.
some of the advice we try to give, and it's hard to give it because things happen so fast and people, but when we deal with students that are having a tough time or something, we do bring up the career path thing. And one of the things we say is, do you have a career field you're interested in? And often they say no. We ought to take it the other way. Like, is there things that you don't want to do? Like, you would not want to do that. Then you can start kind of looking at what you're interested in. I think it's great advice because I think if you look at the days of coming out of high school, coming out of college, and having that one place, that one career, I mean, you look at the mobility that's available, people working from home. It's such a changing environment. And I'm really glad you shared that. That's not something we discussed. That was a wonderful answer. If you want to go back and listen to that again, I would recommend you do that.
Thank you, Dr. Haug.
You actually really had okay, so academically outstanding. Athletically, we knew you from a youngster. You were just so passionate about softball, but at the end of the day, you were also involved in basketball. You were also involved in track, place at the state meet in the discus. Just a well-rounded individual. I did want to pick your brain a little bit because this is something that I could relate to, and that is like you're so passionate about a sport as a youngster, and it's something you're like, I want to do this in college. I did. I knew young I wanted to do it, but ultimately, how much did the softball opportunity really create opportunities for you? I guess is what I'm trying to get at.
Yes, absolutely. Playing select softball, it really got me out of R-VII, I should say. Not that R-VII isn't a lovely place, but I would say that on September 1st, when recruiting really opened up for softball, and I started to receive some calls from some coaches from some schools that I had never considered before. I never thought that I had what it took to play or to be academically successful at these schools. Softball really led me to the idea like, hey, like I can use my sport to get into a really, really good school. And that's exactly what I did with it. There was the childhood dream, of course, of going D1, but that's not ended up what happened because of some guidance that I got while playing softball from my coaches and from some people that I talked to at various schools. So I would 100% say that without softball, I wouldn't have ended up where I am. It's absolutely a wonderful tool for meeting new people and really putting yourself out there and exposing yourself to people who can help guide you in a direction that could really make a really big difference in your life.
What a great approach. And again, I would really listen to that as well as that. I think even in life, sometimes you're just charging along for a dream or a goal, and you begin to realize, well, maybe I'm a better fit there, and I might enjoy that more. And I think that's a really great summary and analysis of it. And I would encourage every student, and I'm just going to share this real quick about my experience. I went to play college football, and I just love football, right? About a year in, and you're starting to listen to people around you, some of your teammates and other things, you begin to realize that the college sport is almost a business at that point. And then you're actually there as a job, for a job. And at some point, you're kind of making that decision like, is this worth it? And for me, it was just because, I walked out of college with no debt. which is a big deal for me.
Absolutely.
So I understand there became a shift in my mind to how good can I be at football to I'm going to do this, but there's also opening some doors for me.
Yes,
and I think that I'm really glad we had that conversation this morning. So one of those doors that opened for you was being introduced and taking advantage specifically of the Air Force ROTC. We want to stress that. And I will also say, if there's anything that I'm asking that you can't answer, it's okay. Like, I don't want to put you in a bad spot with this, because I know there's some confidentiality in some of these programs you're a part of and everything. But before I ask anything about specific, you're busy. You are at WashU, which is a challenging school academically. You are playing softball on the softball team, and you're doing ROTC. I'm going to just ask a simple question. Why? What are you doing? I'm just kidding.
Oh, I know. I question every day. No, I get this question all the time. I mean, even from my own teammates and from people in ROTC, just because of being dual hat the way that I am right now. And honestly, I feel like it wouldn't make sense for me without all three, without academics, without ROTC, and without softball. And I can go into this crazy spiel about like balance and like well-being and like all of these things. But I would just say that when one of them really, really sucks, like when softball is horrible, I can focus on ROTC. Or when ROTC is like really, really a grind, and I feel like I have a lot of early Saturdays, a lot of early Wednesdays, I can just focus a little bit more on school. And really, it's like a constant circle of running away from one of them. But no, it makes a lot of sense for me, and it's not for everyone, of course. But you make time for the things that you care about. And I really do not regret all the time that I've spent playing softball, doing RTC, and then, of course, pursuing my degree.
Yeah, it's impressive how busy you are. And a fun fact, during the Olympic season, Francis Field hosted the 1904
Yes,
Olympic
they did.
Games.
They're very proud.
Yes. So I throw that out there. That's on the campus of WashU. So what drew you towards the Air Force ROTC program at WashU?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I had a little bit of a mid-high school crisis, and I ended up in a recruiting office, and I would just say I didn't necessarily have, I didn't have a military family or a lot of friends in the Air Force. I didn't want to be a pilot since I was 5 years old. I just kind of had a draw to the idea of joining the military, and ROTC really gave me the perfect opportunity to pursue that draw. I was able to go to the college of my choice, still pursue a degree that I was interested in. I was still able to play softball. And ultimately, being in ROTC, as opposed to being somewhere else, gave me the opportunity to really experiment around and see what I wanted to do with this feeling. ROTC was really the perfect opportunity for me, and it's treated me really well ever since.
So I guess in summary, you're not committing to a full military career right out of high school.
No.
You're able to get the college experience.
Yes.
And kind of look and see, is this a path? I think that's really the summary of our podcast today as far as related to the ROTC program, is that just making our kids aware of it.
Absolutely.
And there's many more questions I have here. I will say you've been flying.
Yes. Yeah. In the past.
So kind of walk me through, you had mentioned something about trying to get a slot and logging some hours towards that. You've been actually flying, and yes. I think that's awesome. Tell us about it.
Yes. So when I was a freshman in the program, I actually wanted to go in as a developmental engineer. I was like, I don't know much about piloting. Like, I'm going to go in as an engineer because that's my major, a mechanical engineering major. But I got a scholarship. It was called the You Can Fly Scholarship in October, and it was basically, I can't remember what the amount was, but so much money to go out specifically just to get some flight hours, just to see if I was interested. And I loved it. It was really awesome. And for some reason, the idea of just going out and being able to fly for a little bit before I committed to something.
It adds to the charm.
Oh yeah, it's a very special touch. It reminds me of being in middle school. But yeah, the idea of being able to fly a little bit before I got to my grueling engineering desk job was really exciting to me. So I continued to fly. And the idea of that scholarship is not only build interest, but say you're already interested, it gives people the opportunity to build hours. Because when we apply for pilot slots, second semester, junior year, one of the components that goes into our ranking is how many hours we have.
Okay.
Yeah, so right now it goes up to, I think, 49 hours, like between 49 and 60 hours is the maximum points for that category.
Okay.
Yeah, so really being able to build hours early in ROTC can actually help you get the career that affects, the entire rest of your experience in the Air Force.
So did the scholarship find you, or did you find a scholarship?
The scholarship definitely found me.
Okay.
That's the wonderful thing about ROTC is we have absolutely wonderful cadre, active duty officers and non-commissioned officers that help us find opportunities that they think would be advantageous to our development. And it was definitely something like, hey, Cattoor, I put you up for this. I think it could be a really cool opportunity. So
I'm gonna
nothing
ask
on my end.
You gave me some guidance here. So what exactly is the Air Force ROTC?
Yeah, absolutely. Air Force ROTC or AF ROTC is the Air Force Reserve Officer Training Corps. ROTC is one of the 3 officer commissioning sources that the Air Force and the Space Force use to commission second lieutenants. And the Air Force ROTC mission is to develop Air and Space Force leaders of character whom we expect to fight and win our nation's wars.
That's awesome.
Which is something I had to memorize when I was a little first year.
I do think it's kind of interesting. We take things for granted today, but at one point there was no Air Force. I mean, the planes were they were either embedded into the Army or the Navy, and then eventually there became a Air Force branch of our military. So how is the ROTC structured?
Yeah, so contrary to popular belief, a lot of people ask me this. ROTC cadets don't necessarily train at all at the Air Force Academy. It's almost an entirely separate program, but there are a lot of similarities. Both programs allow cadets to complete officer training in coordination with the completion of their undergraduate degree. So both programs produce commissioned second lieutenants that are ready to move off to their first training base. But ROTC differs in the fact that cadets in ROTC can go to one of the 1,100 universities that are affiliated with the program. They don't have to just go to the academy.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know in speaking with not only students at Jefferson when they were looking at different things, that sometimes at ROTC, in fact, one of my good friends in high school, we went to the same college starting out. He was in the ROTC program there as well. That was the Army, not the Air Force. And I remember I was playing football, so we didn't always see each other a lot. He was out the door early, doing ROTC stuff in the mornings, and then mine extended more in the evenings with the football. So what are the time commitments
Yeah,
to the
absolutely.
ROTC program, specifically to the Air Force?
Yeah, it's a big commitment. All training is completed through respective host detachments. So there's currently 145 specific detachments, and they have cross-town agreements with other universities. So although all of my college classes, my advisors, my meal plan, my softball team, anything affiliated with a typical college experience, that happens at WashU for me. All of my ROTC training takes place at SLU, at my detachment, Det 207. And there's 3 main commitments. There's aerospace studies.
Tardy bell.
Yep. Aerospace studies class, or AS class. There's leadership lab, which we call a lab very affectionately. And then physical training, PT. And the first 2 years of ROTC are known as the General Military Course, or the GMC years. At this time, cadets are required to attend 1 hour of class, 2 hours of LLab, and then at least 2 hours of physical training each week. And then upon completion of the GMC course, cadets are required to then compete for entry into the professional officer course, which is what I'm in right now. And this is typically the last 2 years of the program. There's several factors that kind of go into competing for this, and this is where the commitment part comes in, because you have to keep your GPA up. You have to get certain aptitude testing scores, which I can talk about a little bit later, and then fitness test scores, and then finally commander's ranking, racking and stacking against your peers. But those are used for selection to eventually enter the POC course, the professional officer course, and then to attend field training between your sophomore and your junior year. This is like a 2-week, a little bit more training down in Maxwell Air Force Base. And you're required to attend this sort of leadership camp before you become a trainer within the program. And then once you are a trainer, once you are a POC cadet, you're still required to attend the 2 hours of LLAB because you'll be running it. 2 hours of physical training each week, but the classroom commitment increases to 3 hours per week.
That was a lot to take in, but it does sound like when you talk about did the scholarship find you and the leadership, it sounds like they do a good job of kind of building, sustaining their own.
Yes, for sure. ROTC is almost entirely cadet ran. We
Wow.
have cadre supervision, of course, and the cadre are really the backbone of the entire operation. But ROTC is a really good place to build those tangible, like hands-on leadership skills, not just as an underclassman being trained, but as an upperclassman that I am now, that's actually planning and executing and like just finding all the resources to actually train. Our leadership labs are really, I would say, the bread and butter of what people like think of when they think about ROTC, and those are entirely ran by the POC Cadet Corps. So they really create this cycle where we not only get leadership experience in the stuff that people think about, in the whole, marching around campus, certain procedures that we learn, just teaching those skills can also be really valuable as far as developing yourself as a leader.
I'm listening to you and I think about the title ROTC. Sometimes you say it quickly, but it's Reserved Officer Training Corps.
Yes,
That's what you're doing.
absolutely.
It's really fascinating to hear this. I'm going to ask this question. Maybe it'll make sense. So you have 2 hours of PT and you're also playing a college sport. Do you ever get to allow one workout to cover for the other, or do you have to do both?
Fantastic question. It was my question when I actually signed all of my paperwork, because I don't go to PT. As an athlete, I do
Okay.
not have to go to PT, which
Well, that's neat.
is really huge because,
It is huge.
Yeah, I have lift at the exact same time as PT because PT is normally like 6:15, 6:30 in the morning, and lift is at 6. So if I had to go to both, it would be quite the.
Do you do it in the same
process.
area, or are they two different places?
Lift I do at WashU with the softball team, and then PT we have PT at both SLU and SIUE, one of our crosstown universities.
Really?
Yeah, about half of our detachment is actually coming from SIUE. So because there's so many of them, they don't want them to have to drive the 30 minutes to SLU, every single Tuesday, Friday. So Tuesday, Friday is at SIUE, and then I think Monday, Thursday is at SLU. So people can attend any two of those.
I don't know if I can ask this question, but where do you get to when you were flying? Because it seems like as a kid there was some sort of detachment at Lambert Airport, and that may have been just the reserve, the Missouri Reserve. Where do you get to fly? What airports are you going to fly out of?
That's the great thing about a lot of the ROTC flight scholarships is you can pick where you want to fly out of.
Okay.
So I chose to fly out of downtown airport in Cahokia.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's normally where I flew out of. But yeah, there have been other cadets who've flown out of Spirit of St. Louis and other local places.
Gotcha. Cool. I'm learning a lot here. So what opportunities are available to ROTC cadets? Well, we actually spoke about one of them earlier.
yeah.
You got to travel Italy and get a taste of that. So go ahead.
Yeah, countless opportunities, really. I'm going to start with money, and then I'm going to move into kind of some of the cooler stuff. But basically, even as a student interested in ROTC as a high schooler, high schoolers are eligible to apply for the high school scholarship program. There's the Air Force part of it, and now there's a Space Force part of it. They didn't have this back when I was in high school, but
Just so long ago, Catryn.
I know. Well, ROTC is always changing. Like
just kidding.
this podcast might even not be relevant in a year. But
But the point is explore.
yes, like
Keep your options open and explore.
absolutely, yeah. Because there's always new stuff opening up. But yeah, the high school scholarship program. I encourage people to kind of start thinking about this in the first semester of their senior year. But 4-year scholarships, they're referred to as Type 1 scholarships. They're really very generous, full tuition and fees, and then they also include an annual book stipend and a monthly living stipend. There's also, out of high school, the junior ROTC scholarship known as the J100. And this is very similar to the Air Force Type 1, except the book stipend can actually be converted into a housing room and board scholarship as well. Okay. So those are kind of the high school options. And then once cadets are in ROTC, say, they didn't even know about the high school option or they competed and didn't get one, there's also in-college scholarships. These are Type 1 and Type 2. The Type 2 are very similar to the Type 1 in that they also have the annual book stipend and the monthly living stipend, but they cover $18,000 in tuition rather than the full tuition.
Okay.
And then lastly, there's the General Charles McGee Leadership Award, and this is a new one. This is actually a really cool one, but it's an in-college scholarship awarded to all contracting cadets who are not already on scholarship. And the reason I had to read that like word for word was because of how cool it is. It's basically anybody that isn't already on scholarship after they complete field training, because normally you would officially sign all of your military paperwork after you complete field training. Anybody that isn't already on scholarship is going to be automatically put on scholarship. Okay. And this program wasn't in place until I think it was 1 or 2 years ago, but it's really cool. And it can also be converted into a housing scholarship like the J100, but a really cool opportunity. And there's also other incentives, like I talked about, converting it into a housing stipend that can be kind of worked through the host attachment. But yeah, besides actual ROTC affiliated scholarships, there's other organizations that offer ROTC scholarships, including the Order of the Dalliance and then also Arnold Air Society. But yeah, whatever scholarships you apply for, there's a lot of different eligibility requirements, and that's what kind of draws people away. But if you start researching early and you reach out for help, like I'm always available for help. They're out there. They just take a bit of work to apply. And then beyond scholarships, there's actually tuition waivers too. So some states like Illinois, they offer tuition waivers to cadets in Air Force ROTC, meaning that the state itself is willing to waive tuition costs for resident Air Force ROTC cadets that are enrolled in their public institutions. So basically, like our cadets at SIUE, if they live in Illinois, attend SIUE, and then cross town to our detachment, they're eligible for the Illinois state tuition waiver. And even though, unfortunately, Missouri doesn't offer these at the time, if you know any Jefferson R-7ers find themselves in a weird situation where they suddenly live in Illinois, like, yeah, that option's always out there.
We'll send them to Mr. Schaefer and let him kind of get him low down.
Really? But yeah, the opportunity to pay for college is out there, like between scholarships and tuition waivers. But honestly, when talking about opportunities, I think what the Air Force does best is the officer development trainings that I kind of mentioned earlier.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Or the ODTs, because seriously, like they're outside of the classroom events and programs, and they're meant to motivate and inspire the GMC, the younger cadets, but they're meant to further develop and really enhance the leadership skills of POC. And what I found, it really is like the light at the end of the tunnel, because ROTC is a lot different than the real Air Force. So it's really encouraging to go out to an ODT and see people actually doing the job. But yeah, the catalog comes out normally in January of each year, and there's all kinds of stuff. This actually is an opportunity where cadets can go out to the academy. The academy has a free-falling parachuting course. They have a survival training course. They have gliders fundamentals. They got all kinds of stuff out there, even some Space Force stuff.
We were out there a couple of years ago on vacation, and I never got to see Brendan do this out there, but we happened to be there the day they were doing the gliders thing.
Really?
And it is.
Oh, it's so cool.
It's so neat to pull over the highway and just watch it. And anybody can pull up and watch it, and it's so pretty there with the mountains, and they just let the gliders come down.
That's awesome.
I'm
cool.
Sorry to distract you.
Oh,
there,
no.
We sat there for probably like
tangent.
30 minutes just watching that. It was so relaxing.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway.
It's so cool. There's other opportunities, like you can shadow operational units pretty much anywhere in the country through a program called Ops Air Force. They've made a lot of opportunities available after field training. So one of my friends went straight to Vandenberg Space Force Base right after field training. Yeah. Super cool. ODTs, they can also help cadets secure internships. So I know people who've had internships at Boeing, the Air Force Research Lab, Global Strike Command, the 45th Launch Control Group, and even the Pentagon. I had a friend who just got back from the Pentagon. And then lastly, one of the cooler ODTs that I know of is Project Go. I have a friend right now in Oman. He comes back in, I think, 8 days, and then a friend in Indonesia, and they're learning Arabic in Indonesia, or Indonesian in those countries for the ODT. So, like, truly, the opportunities are endless, and I would never have had the chance to do some of these things if it weren't for the Air Force. Like we kind of talked about, I went out to Italy my first time out of the country. I've had numerous incentive flights. I've flown the C-130 very recently, the A-27 last year, and then while I was on my ODT that eventually took me to Italy, I got to go down to Texas and fly the T-38, which is so awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then 2 summers ago, probably the coolest ODT I've had. I did do the Air Force Academy free for all program, and I got 5 solo jumps out of an airplane.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so
That's all you.
cannot speak enough. Like really, the Air Force has some really awesome opportunities, and they all come out in that little catalog at the beginning of the semester. And honestly, someone asked me the other day, like, oh, like, well, how did you end up in Italy? Like, did you have to do something crazy to qualify for this? Not really. I said,
You just
I'm
ask
interested
questions.
I'm interested in this major FAVO. And she said, okay, send me back a 1-page memorandum on why you'd like to go. So the opportunities are out there. It's just really like making those connections, talking to people,
so
and letting them know what you're interested in.
It's funny because we know Catryn and the softball, but the softball thing has opened up this opportunity for you.
Definitely.
And it's really been worthwhile. As before I get to the next question here, you mentioned Vandenberg. I love reading about military and space stuff. That they actually there's actually a picture of a space shuttle sitting years ago at they were trying to use that as a military weapon.
Oh, really?
Or use. It never actually happened, and they contracted through to get them up, but they were worried about launching from Vandenberg because it would put it over the continental and not over the ocean. If you're really bored out there, I've got that book for you. Anyway, so I'm going to ask this kind of twofold question. What kind of jobs are available to cadets? And then how do you see this playing out as you sit here today for you?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a full, complete list of jobs. It's called the Air Force Officer Classification Directory. And this is a 250-page resource that people have there. And I don't say that to like scare people, but I do say that to put it out there. Like, not everybody in the Air Force is pilots. Very common misconception. But basically, if it exists in the civilian world, there's a chance that the Air Force probably has some kind of equivalent. Like, yeah, you can be a financial management officer, a weather officer, a nurse, a chemist. You can even be a civil engineer. Like, you don't even have to be like an aerospace engineer. But the cool thing about the Air Force and what people normally ask about is the jobs that don't exist in the civilian world, or at least the jobs that aren't readily available to cadets, like or I should say students fresh out of college. So as an ROTC cadet,
Fighter pilot.
yeah, fighter pilot, literally. Yeah.
Those aren't in the civilian world.
Yeah, but I applied for a bunch of rated jobs, and pilot's one of them. Combat systems officer is another one. Air battle managers, and then remotely piloted aircraft pilots.
Air battle manager.
Air battle manager, yeah. An air battle manager is basically like the coordinator of the sky. So if you see a big plane with a radar dish on it, there's probably a guy in there coordinating refueling is a very common task that they've got. And then remotely piloted aircraft pilot, they're the ones flying our unmanned vehicles. And then combat systems officers, they're the backseaters, the one that are controlling like your electronic warfare assets and then also your weapon systems.
I forget where I was at, but I'm pretty sure somewhere in Missouri, but I just by chance saw one of the stealth bombers flying over and it was being refueled.
That's awesome.
It was pretty cool.
That's
that was neat.
Very cool sight.
Yeah, and it wasn't like I was there to see it. It was just happening. It was pretty cool. So who's eligible? How can you join?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, once you've been accepted at a full-time undergraduate university that hosts ROTC or one of the crosstown schools, like WashU, for example, joining ROTC is really as simple as reaching out. So just like with reaching out for opportunities, like ODT opportunities, just reaching out to that host attachment, making those connections. And that connection should really take place in the spring, summer, before your first year of college. Unless you're applying for the high school scholarship, then that would probably happen a semester earlier. And then there are opportunities even after you've started college to join ROTC, but that's very detachment specific. So once again, just reaching out to your local detachment. Yeah, and then as far as eligibility goes, I would say one of the biggest barring factors to people trying to join ROTC is the medical review process. So like if you don't remember anything else from this and you're interested in joining ROTC, please start the medical review process as soon as possible. You have to be medically cleared by the DoD Medical Examination Review Board before you can attend field training. So for those of us that were listening, field training is between like sophomore and junior year typically. So you might think like, oh, like I have 2 years before I have to qualify to do this. But some disqualifiers are waivable and some are not, unfortunately. So it's really important to start the process as soon as possible. So either A, you have time to pursue waivers and get those waivers before field training, because with a system that's dealing with thousands of people trying to go to field training
Right.
in one summer, it can get really backed up and can take some serious time. And I've seen people get delayed from going out there because they were working. Yeah, because they were working on a waiver. And then B, so that you know if your disqualification is not waivable, that you can discontinue the program, you know? Because as much as we want to bring in as many interested people as possible, there's just some things that aren't waivable, and it's unfortunate, and you don't want to have to waste any more of their time than you have to.
Makes sense.
But yeah, and then as far as other requirements go, there's GPA minimums. So it's 2.5 for folks on scholarship, and then folks applying for scholarships, and then 2.0 for non-scholarship. Then there's fitness scores. So I don't know how much we touched on physical training, but typically takes place in the morning, consists of body weight exercises and athletic competitions, knockout, ultimate frisbee, my favorites. But it's largely cadet ran, and it's encouraging preparation for the physical fitness assessment. This is
You have to do any just like running?
not just running. Yeah, it's a minute of push-ups, minute of sit-ups, and a 1.5 mile run.
I mean, on the physical, the PT, are you running? Like, you have to go run a mile or 2 or 3?
Yeah, 1.5 miles.
Okay.
Yep. So there's specific scores that you have to meet, and of course, like just going to PT is not going to prepare you for that. It's just meant to encourage it. But yeah, that's one of the minimums that people have to maintain in order to stay in. And then I also mentioned the standardized testing that we do, the Air Force Officer Qualifying Test. It's basically like an ACT, to be honest. I think you mentioned the ACT earlier.
Yeah.
But it's like an ACT with planes.
Okay.
At the very end, and then some various like critical thinking things. But there's certain categories that you have to meet a minimum before you can apply for field training. Yeah, those are the main eligibility requirements.
Wow. Final question to ROTC: why join?
Yeah, this question comes up all the time. Like talking about like why are you here? Why do you want to join this program? Why do you want to go into the Air Force? And like I talked about, like when I was in high school, like I really didn't know that this was my path. It was really just like a draw to maybe giving it a try. So that's where ROTC comes in. And like I talked about, it was just the perfect opportunity for me. And it's not for everyone, absolutely. And it's not even available to everyone, unfortunately. But joining the military isn't even for everyone. But I at least hope that I've given some information regarding ROTC, kind of, swelled or quelled some disbelief. That someone can go and join this program just on a whim, kind of like I did. Because truly the leadership and the time management and the communication skills, especially, that I've developed in this program, they're truly priceless.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and the people that I spend every day with are my lifelong friends. So I can't speak highly enough of this program. And please, like if you're interested in all, just give it a try. Like you're not locked in your first year. Even if you're on scholarship, you're not locked in your first year, and chances are you won't be locked in your second year either. So who knows? Give it a try.
Kidding.
Yeah,
That's really great advice there.
yeah. Maybe you'll find a reason to stay, like I did.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Before we close back out, we're going to go to 2 more Catryn R-7 questions. So your
boy.
mom recently showed me a video of you guys down in Costa Rica, and you guys are out kind of on a beach. I actually didn't see you in the video. It was actually Peyton, and there was this monkey.
Yeah, I didn't let the monkeys climb on me.
That's
why I wasn't in the video.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's an oldest child thing. We know better than let those little things,
Yeah, their teeth
cute as can
their
be,
teeth were sharp.
yeah, crawl right up her dress, and she fed it. I'm like, oh no.
Yeah, that was
Nope.
one of her favorite parts. And I fed them. I have a picture of it, like taking it from my hand. But like, you best believe, like I was like.
And you're doing what I would do. I would call it an it.
Yeah.
And not, a monkey or he or she or whatever. I don't know. But thank you for not letting the monkey run up and down. Okay. I'm going to go back to your softball days here.
Yes.
I want you 1 to 2, and you can go 3, kind of your favorite memories associated specifically with Jefferson softball.
I would say my favorite memory from Jefferson softball was the time that Brittany Biddick brought her horse to practice.
Didn't see that coming.
100%.
I actually saw Brittany the other day.
That was so easy. That was such an easy answer.
Okay.
When we went to regionals my senior year and we beat Pius.
Gotcha.
is probably like the actual softball related answer. That was awesome. And I remember when Megan struck out the last girl. It was like swinging like high, like nowhere even near the zone, and Megan just kind of stood there. And she was like shocked. Like that was the coolest thing, was going to regionals and just being Pius. Like we didn't even win, but the fact that we beat Pius, like that was like probably like the highlight of my entire career here.
I will say this, and I'm going to close out with this as far as your softball stuff. Years ago, when I first started in this business, I was at St. Dominic, and there was a young lady in there. I think her name was Jenny Schellert, and she was the Gatorade Player of the Year in Missouri. And our practice football field was kind of here, and the softball field was kind of here, and there was a little bit of a hillside. It seemed like when they had a game, it seemed like every 25, 30 minutes, I would just hear just a crack, and that ball would just go sailing. I mean, she just could smash it. And I have only heard that sound twice, and you were the other one. You could just absolutely smoke it. So it was a joy to watch you play. You're a great person. We were so fortunate to have you at our high school. Good luck in all your endeavors, and thanks for joining us today. There's some great points that you want to listen to, not just about the ROTC program, but kind of her journey. Thanks again.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yep. Thank you.